Welcome to the Write Like a Badass podcast. Gail R. Delaney is a fiction editor with 20 plus years of experience. She's also an author of science fiction, romantic suspense, contemporary suspense. We are going to talk about both. Gail was an apprentice line editor and then progressed to acquisitions, then to executive editor, editor-in-chief for a small press. She did that for 10 years, where she oversaw more than 100 authors, line, content, and proofreading professionals, and she managed the release of more than 800 manuscripts. Gail, I do not know where you found the time to do all that and write all the books you've written, but let's talk about your editing services first, because I think a lot of writers can benefit from your expertise.
Certainly. Sounds good.
All right. You warn people on your website. I am a tough editor, so be warned. What does that mean in practical terms?
It just means that I am going to drill down to the finest detail. I'm not going to skim too quickly. I am going to often explain why I may be doing some kind of an edit so that it's understood why I'm doing it. But I push hard on making sure that the book is as polished as it can be by the time we're done with what we're doing.
You feel strongly that line editing and proofreading should be done by two different people. I think we all know what proofreading is, but what is line reading, line editing?
Line editing is the most expansive and most detailed edit that you're usually going to get for your book. So this is an editor going through not just grammar and punctuation and things like that. We look at sentence structure, we look at paragraph flow, we look at the story arc, we look at every element of the book that can be from the smallest detail to big details. So when I do a line edit, I go through the book twice with the editor, the author rather, just to make sure that everything is as polished as it can be, so that when it goes to the proofreading, it's only little things that they should be able to find.
What does a developmental editor do? And do you do that as well?
I do developmental editing, and that is one of the first phases of editing. That's usually when an author sends me their first draft. They may have polished it a little bit, but what I'm doing is going through it with them to maybe point out repeated errors that they make, like repeated grammar, repeated whatnot. But it's more about the flow of the story arc, the character development, the plot. So I give feedback on maybe you want to look at this. My suggestion is to do this. So I'm not in there fixing typos. I'm not in there fixing grammar or anything. I'm just talking about the story itself.
Are authors ever surprised unpleasantly, maybe, at some of the changes that you want made?
Very rarely have I had an author that really was not happy, not happy with what I did for them. And I suppose that sometimes that's going to happen, but for the most, I work well with my editor, with with my authors, and we have a good communication, so we do well. And I'm a freelance editor, which means I can make a suggestion, but it's up to them whether they want to take it or not. That's different than if you're working with a publishing house who you're under contract with and such. In those cases, the publishing house or the editor can say, no, we're requiring you to do this.
Or we
But when
won't
you're,
publish?
Mhm.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that can happen. But when you're freelance and you're working with indie authors, I am giving suggestions as to how I think it will improve and how it will be better. It's up to them whether that is a twist that they don't want to do or they don't like a certain thing. That's up to them. It's completely up to them. So that helps sometimes with the communication when they understand that I'm not going, you've got to do this. So
You're not going to check up on them later and see if they made the
no,
changes you
exactly,
require.
exactly.
Do you work with a lot of first-time authors, or do you also work with more experienced ones?
I have across the board. I have done them all. And even just this year, say thus far this year, I'm probably 50-50 split between debut novels and second or third book with a author or more in their series or anything like that. I have a lot of authors that come back to me. So in that way, I may have already edited 4 or 5 books for one author. So they're established. But then I also have, yeah, I don't shy away from new debut authors because that's honestly where I get the most satisfaction when we're done, is helping them see how they can improve and seeing them do that and seeing them feel better about their book and maybe realizing they had more going for them than they thought they did. So that's kind of my favorite, actually.
What are the most common mistakes that you see authors make?
Probably the most common is punctuation around dialogue tags. It's something that a lot of people have struggled with. Like, is it a comma? Is it a period? Is it an action tag? Is it, that kind of thing. For grammar and punctuation, that's usually the most difficult thing or the most repeated thing. As far as storylines, there's never anything I would say is consistent, other than maybe I'm telling them give me more. Like they write short or not detailed enough, and I'm asking them to give me more description, give me more character development, give me more whatever.
Let's say I've written a 400-page book and I'm
Mhm.
really eager. I intend to self-publish it. How long is it going to take you to edit that for me?
I tell an author to plan on no more than 2 weeks for me to do my process. Like, for instance, if we're doing a line edits, I do two full line edits for the author. That first line edit, it will be at the most 2 weeks for me to do my part in that first phase. And then I send it to them, and when they send it back to me, it may be another week. So because this is my full-time job, I'm not trying to fit this in around a 9 to 5 or anything else. So I can commit a solid week to an author kind of thing. So I think I have a little bit faster turnaround than some freelance editors, but I don't think that's indicative of what you're going to get in the end. But a couple of weeks.
Okay. Have you ever, I almost hate to ask this, but I have to. Have you ever turned down a manuscript because it was just too bad?
Once. And that was, yeah, it was actually when I mentioned earlier that the author wasn't happy with my responses to her. Um, I had started doing the edit and it was just it was beyond even that I could handle with a developmental edit. And when I went back to her with some of the things that I felt she needed to work on before we could continue, she kind of had a bit of a meltdown.
Oh,
She sent me a lot of emails, bashing me. She did some videos on TikTok, though she did not say my name. If she
okay.
said my name, I probably would have been a lot more upset. But she was like, this editor, kind of thing. She even said she did exactly what I paid her to do. And then she went into how that was terrible. It's like,
Oh,
you know.
I mean, you pour your heart and soul into your writing, as I know everyone does who
Mhm.
writes, and it's got to be hard to hear that it is not good. But you did give her the opportunity to make it better, correct?
Yes, yes. I gave her step by steps. I would give her examples from her book saying, okay, here, this is what you did. This is my suggestion. There were a lot of plot elements that I felt were implausible, completely implausible. And I suggested firmly to her that she needed to undo those because I couldn't imagine somebody reading the book and being like, oh, yeah, that would totally happen. It was, it was beyond that. Um, and I tried, and she just didn't want to continue. So now I did look later, several months later, she did self-publish the books. And when I looked at just the samples, she had implemented many of the things that I had said.
Oh, she went ahead and took your advice.
Yes. Either
Oh,
that or another editor told her the same thing. And then she had to accept it and go from there.
she found
Could
the
have been
deal.
either one of those things.
I have to say, when I was a younger writer, constructive criticism, I have to say, when I was a younger writer, constructive criticism really stung. I mean, it took me
Oh, yeah.
a long time to be able to accept it. And now I'm pretty blasé. I'm like, well, yeah, I can change that and I'll consider that. But in the early days, whew,
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. I mean, I was there at one point too. I was the new author. I was doing my first books and I had to get that kind of feedback and it made me doubt, should I be doing this?
Yes.
Yeah.
We all have been there. Like,
Yes.
why am I even doing this?
Yes. Yes, exactly.
But at least there's a name for it now, imposter syndrome.
Right.
There wasn't when I was young.
And I tell my authors, anytime I hear an author say, um, I have imposter syndrome and I don't know that I should continue or anything like that, I tell them imposters don't have imposter syndrome. Meaning if you truly shouldn't be doing this, you're not going to care. It's the people who care about their work and care about what they're going to do with it. They're the ones that question themselves and doubt their work and have that imposter syndrome. So if you're truly an imposter, you don't have imposter syndrome. So if you have imposter syndrome, you're okay because we all do. Yeah.
That is a great nugget of wisdom. Wow. I might have to, I don't know, put that on a poster.
Go for it.
All right. Now, you say on your website you do not offer sensitivity reader services. What are those?
That is when an author may have written a book that has elements that may be outside their lived experience, or they are writing topics that should be seen by somebody that would be affected by the topic to see if they are doing it well. This might be a white author writing characters that are people of color. It's not your lived experience. So before you publish, you should have a sensitivity reader who lives that experience to tell you if you're doing okay or not. And honestly, as a white author, I don't feel like I am equipped to comment on a lot of those kinds of topics. I probably could have when it came to disability or something like that because I am disabled. So that I could, but generally speaking, I prefer not to tread that ground. I prefer to let them check with somebody. I have said to an author, this part you might want to have somebody look at. I'm not going to comment on it, but it made me pause, so maybe you should have somebody look at it. But that's what that is. Sensitivity reading is just making sure that you're not writing in a way that is hurtful to another community.
Well, that's good to know. I certainly have written characters who are not at all like me.
Hmm.
I didn't specifically seek out a sensitivity reader, but I often got feedback from people who I knew who had those lived experiences.
Hmm.
But, I don't simply want to write characters who are just like me. That would be so
Exactly.
boring.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
All right, let's talk about the books you write. You're an author. I'm going to have to ask you this. Do you hire someone to edit your books?
A bit. Honestly, I don't pay anybody to be an editor for me. I do have people who serve as basically like the proofreading stage. I, over time, have become a very clean writer as far as my final product, my first draft, is very close to publishing stage. That's just years of experience and whatnot, and that's how I got into editing because my drafts were that clean, and that's how I got approached to be an editor. I don't recommend that for everybody, uh, but for myself, no, I do not pay another editor.
Okay. Let's tell me about the books that you write. There are so many listed on your website. I don't even know where to start.
I've got a little bit of everything. I do have a little bit of everything. I started as a contemporary romance writer, just, a single title. Uh, the book that I have available now that was my very first published book is called Precious Things. And that's the first one that went through a publishing house and, did the whole route. Then after writing a couple of those, I was kind of stuck. I was in a spot where I wasn't feeling like I was being very creative. So I was writing fan fiction in a science fiction genre. And friends of mine who are authors kept saying, why don't you just write science fiction? Just write science fiction. I'm a Gen Xer, and we were raised to think that girls didn't belong in science fiction,
Oh, no.
right? So I was very hesitant for a long time because I felt like I'm not supposed to be able to write that because I'm a girl. And they pushed, and that's when I ended up starting my Future Possible Saga, which is 8 books of a science fiction romance series. It's a near future Earth-based science fiction. Science fiction. And then I have my suspense romance, and that is my Baker Street Legacy, which is based on the idea that Sherlock Holmes was real, but my hero is his descendant, is his great grandson.
Oh,
So a lot of people do kind of Sherlock reimaginings where they put Sherlock in different situations. They might even gender swap Sherlock or something like that. I don't. I'm like, Sherlock was Sherlock, and this is a descendant of Sherlock who lives in that shadow a little bit, but he's still his own man. He's a lot like Sherlock, but he's not Sherlock.
is he
So that,
also into the deductive reasoning? Does he
yes.
work out
Yeah.
mysteries?
The way that I put it in the book, in the series, is that he's the first descendant of Sherlock that really seemed to have that spark, that ability to see the gossamer threads that connect things and to solve cases or whatever. He is an MI6 officer. So, he works for the government, but he uses that ability that came down to him from Sherlock to solve things, to figure things out. Yeah.
I want to touch on the fact that you write a lot of series, but I want to back up for just a minute. You said you had a book published with a traditional publisher. Do you always do that, or do you self-publish, or do you mix them?
I went from being published traditionally to when I was editor in chief, it was actually my own publishing house. I owned it, um, and I had business partners and such that we did it together. And that was kind of a hybrid between traditional publishing and indie author because it was through a publishing house. And then I had, hundreds of other books that we published. And then when we closed the publishing house, I went full indie. So any books that I had previously had published, I then republished under my own name, my own imprint. But yeah, I started in traditional.
How do you promote your books if you're an indie publisher or a self-publisher?
Oh, if we all knew that, that would be amazing. I try a little bit of everything. I think, like most of us, you kind of throw the spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. I definitely have had success being on TikTok with my books. I've been selling more since coming on to Book Talk than I did before that. So this is a good social media um, option for me, like medium. TikTok works well for me. But it's a little bit of everything. You post something here, you put a video there, you do an excerpt, you try a bunch of different things and see what happens.
I understand. I think the promotion is the hardest part of
Yes, it
being an
is.
indie author.
Yes.
Now, let's get back to the fact that you write series. You mentioned the Baker Street Legacy, 3 books. The
Hmm.
Future Possible Saga series consists of 8 books. How do you manage such large projects and like continue storylines and character arcs over such a long period?
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that because I am what they call a pantser, or you want to call it a discovery writer. I don't plot. I just start writing. And I myself have been amazed when threads come together and work, and I'm just like, oh my God, that actually worked. So I have to keep notes of things that I've done so that I remember it later. But how I do it, I explain it like I am just writing the incident report. I am just watching this happen in my head and I am writing it down. I don't tell characters what they have to do. I don't plan on where they're going to go. They do it and I write it down.
It's
That's
like
the
you're channeling them.
Yes, it kind of feels like that sometimes. It feels like that. I'm just kind of over there making notes as events happen. I have a rough idea. I have a beginning point in my mind. I might have an idea of what kind of events cause the act flip, like from act one to act two to act three. And then I know the goal of where I'm going with it. But how I get to those points, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Wow. I have to say, I'm impressed. I can barely handle like one book, one set of characters, one plot and subplots, and for you to continue on through 8 books is amazing to me.
And that series isn't done. That one
Oh,
is, yeah.
there's
It's
more.
so when I wrote the first 4 books, I considered that a series, 4 books. And when I finished writing it, I thought, okay, that was good. 4 books, that's awesome. I'm done. Now let's go do something else. And a couple of years later, I kind of started hearing the voices saying, no, it's not done. And that's when the next 4 books, they're kind of their own arcs, right? So the first 4 books is kind of one cellular, course of events, and it had an end point. And the second 4 books pick up after that, but it's their own storyline in those. And then I have an idea for a prequel, 1 book, and then I have ideas for probably 5 or 6 books that would be probably 30 years after the end of the 8th book that I've written. So
The way you describe it, it sounds like you're being haunted by ghosts. No, Gail, we're not done. Keep writing us.
sometimes it feels like that. Sometimes it does. I have said this before, one of the main characters in the Future Possible saga, his name is Michael Tanner. And I truly am sad that the universe will never have Michael Tanner. Like, it hurts my heart that we won't have Michael Tanner because he's just so real to me and so powerful as a character and everything about him. It's just sad that he will never be here. That
Wow.
makes sense. Yeah.
Now I want to meet Michael Tanner. 8 books. I'm a Gemini. I don't know if I have that kind of staying power, but I might try this. Which brings me to another question. Do you have a way of knowing if people get hooked on these books and read every single one in the series?
I usually hear from people as they're reading. I get emails, I get messages. I've gotten it that way. Now, I mean, you can monitor on your sales venues whether, all the books have been purchased or anything like that. But I actually get a lot of uh, feedback from readers that they will contact me. Sometimes they contact me a little mad
Oh,
because they may have hit a point in a book. They're like, no, you did not. And I have to be like, don't worry, keep going, keep reading. Um, but that's really it, is when I get the response from people, they've gone all the way through it.
then you know they're really invested.
Yes, yeah. Because
Wow.
I admit it's not an easy series to get through. These are not standalones. You can't just pick up the 3rd book and read it.
Mm.
You have to read the 8 books in order to get the full story. So each book has its own storyline, like its own arc, and then that spreads out to, say, the 4 books, and then there's even the bigger arc that goes through the 8 books. So you can't just pop in and out. You have to go all the way through to get everything.
Now, you mentioned how you can check sales. How do you sell your books? I bet a lot of people would be interested to know that, a lot of writers.
I do what they call wide. I distribute wide, which means I sell my book anywhere online that you can buy a book. You can get one of my books. You can get it in ebook. You can get it in paperback. You can get it in hardcover, anywhere that they're sold. So I even distribute internationally. So in the UK and such, there's bookshop.org, which is mostly the UK. You can buy my books there. So anywhere, anywhere that you can buy a book online, you can buy my books.
All right. What have you got in the works? Anything? Now, you mentioned more books in those two series. Are there other books that are on your radar that you're going to write?
Right now, I feel like I'm bouncing between three. And a week ago, I would have said two. So a third idea came to me. So one that I'm actively churning in my brain is the prequel to the Future Possible saga. In comparison to 2026, it's in the past. So it would be in the early 2000s is when that book is set because it kind of leads into the rest of them. And I've got probably 30,000 words written on that one. I have a suspense romance that I'm working on. Um, it's a very different kind of suspense romance, I think, because the characters in it are by no means people who would ever usually be in a suspense romance. They are orchestral musicians. So this isn't like a high danger job or anything that would put them in that case, in that situation, but it happens. So that's that book. And then this past weekend, a idea came to me that it was one of those things that I said, someday I'm going to figure out a plot for this. And this past weekend, my brain figured it out. So I wrote 2,500 words. So
You seem like you're a very fast writer. Is that true?
no,
Oh,
no, this just came really easy over the weekend. I honestly used to be. I used to be able to, I wrote the first four books in my Future Possible saga in 9 months. The four books, got them all done. And I used to be able to do that. I used to do books pretty quickly, maybe two or three a year kind of thing. But in 2015, I was in a car accident, and it was a pretty bad car accident. And it took me a few years to be in a place where physically I could commit the time to sitting and writing, and mentally, emotionally, all of that was playing into my inability to really write.
I'm so sorry that happened to you. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a challenge for a lot of years, and really only in the last 2 or 3 years has the pain become to a manageable point that it doesn't hinder me. But for a lot of years, yeah, it was tough for a while.
That's terrible. I am glad though it sounds like your writing is something that helps you, that helps you, even though it might have been taxing at sometimes, but you came back to it for a reason, I'm thinking.
Writing has always been a cathartic experience for me. I've been writing since I was old enough to be able to write on a piece of paper. I've always had ideas and stories. And even when I was little, before I knew how to spell or anything, I would just make little marks on a piece of paper, and then I would read it to my parents, like what the story was. I was writing stories in middle school. I wrote a book when I was in high school. That book has never seen the light of day, and it probably never will.
I've got some of those too. Yes.
Yeah. And then in my 20s was when I decided to really commit to the idea of writing a book for publication. And so that's when I started that.
We are running out of time, so I'm going to ask you one last question because you are an experienced writer, an experienced editor, especially for a lot of indie authors. What's some good advice you have for people?
The advice that I always give to people is that advice is not for everybody. Like a good piece of advice is not going to apply to everyone. So even if somebody says, this is my best advice for an author, that doesn't mean that the person hearing it can use that advice. And I think oftentimes authors feel like if somebody took the time to tell them something, then they need to apply it to their writing. And that's not always the case. So be true to the idea and the story that you want to tell. You can use ideas and advice and experience from other people, but know that it may not be always for you.
That's a good note to end on. I will include your website link and then information. It has information about your editing services. Include all that in the show notes in case anybody listening wants to contact you about that. Do you have
Good.
some time at this time, or are you overburdened with editing jobs?
Right now, I am booked solid until June.
Okay.
And then June and July, I probably can take one, maybe two authors, and that's it.
All
And
right. Get your
after
bids
that,
in then.
and then after that, right now, it's wide open because authors aren't necessarily scheduling that far out themselves. Um, but I would say that if anybody is interested, when you go to my website, when you go to the editor services page, there is an inquiry form at the bottom where you provide me the information on your book and you tell me when you would like to possibly edit. And then I can come back with, I can do it then, or I can't do it then, but here's when I could. So just to start a communication with anybody.
All right. Good to know. Well, thank you so much for your time, Gail.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate that.
Maybe we'll have to have you on again in the future and give
Okay.
more updates to people about editing services and about how they can make their books and their stories better.
I would be happy to do that.